The art of mockery is a delicate one, requiring a certain intelligence, restraint, and sense of timing. Margaret Atwood, Canadian novelist, poet, and literary critic. All right, good morning. Welcome to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. For tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. I saw a video yesterday and it popped up a few times in my timeline. And every time it popped up, I absolutely had an entirely different perspective on it. And it wasn't good. So let's start by saying this. So you've probably seen like this white dudes for Harris or something like that. And there was this Zoom call or something like that. And all these like white guys were getting on there. And I didn't watch any of it. So I have no idea what it's about other than what I can guess. So in other words, I don't know for sure. I'm just taking a wild stab at it based on some of the comments I've seen and just based on the idea. And apparently there was a similar one for women. And in this women's one, it was a bunch of like privileged women, I guess. And let's see, what was it? It was called White Women for Harris. And it attracted like over 160,000 people. Like apparently there were so many people that the platform, which I think it was Zoom, they were actually struggling to be able to maintain the video, and it had a lot of really well-known people, and apparently it was a bunch of women, and one particular woman was on there. Her name was Ariel Fodor, I think, and, she had said, "As white women, we need to use our privilege to make positive changes." Okay, and I don't really I'm not a big fan of leading with your skin color, saying like, "Well, as white people, we need to do this," or if I were to say like, "As Native American people, we would need to do this." I mean, I guess if you're talking to a crowd specifically of white women or black women or Native American women or whatever the case may be, I guess maybe that would be. But I would just say probably like, "Hey, we could make the world a better place. We have this power." Right, rather than kind of lead with your identity as if that's the important thing. And he makes videos on Instagram and TikTok, and I'm not. I only perused through a couple of them. They seem to be mocking videos, and I'm going to show you one in a minute. Then we're going to talk about it, and then I'm going to kind of parallel that with a story from a recent story with my son. And then she went on to say, if you find yourself talking over or speaking for BIPOC individuals, BIPOC for the record is it's black what was it again? Black in not Indian. I forgot the I. Indigenous, which is supposed to be me. I always forget that because I don't use this term. But anyway, so BIPOC is black, indigenous, people of color individuals. So it's supposed to is basically supposed to be an acronym for like anybody that's not white and just kind of like a catch-all. It's kind of like the LGBTQ plus 2IA or whatever, all the letters that they have. And they just keep adding because they're trying to like wrap up everybody in this single acronym. It's basically doing the same thing, like, hey, if you're not white, you must be one of these letters. So anyway, and it goes on, she says, if you find yourself talking over or speaking for BIPOC individuals, or God forbid, correcting them, just take a beat and instead we can put our listening ears on. Now, apparently, Ariel she does videos on childhood education. I don't know if most of her videos happen to be just communicating out to those who are also educators. But some of her videos are very infantilizing toward adults, and I would say even children. and we're gonna play a video, and you're gonna see it. And I think this video is like a stitch of like several different clips, so it's not just one. So you're getting like multiple. And the only way that I can really if I were to describe it in one single word, I would say cringe. It is that bad. So let me play this video. Let's get right onto it. And can I just say I'm sorry in advance? In advance, like just I want to apologize before you see this, before you watch this, before you listen to it. But here we go.
Oh no, catch a bubble, Uncle Norm. I think you said an inside thought out loud. Huh. Is him wearing nail polish a big problem or a little problem? Oh no, does it hurt your body or your heart? Oh my goodness, is he putting the nail polish on your hand? Is he saying, I have nail polish and you don't? Oh, macaroni cheese, everybody freeze. Uncle Don, no one wants to take your gas stove. No, friend, they just want you to know about your gas stove. Do you see how it says natural gas? Yeah, they just want to put a little warning sticker on your stove so that you know that it actually means methane gas. Yeah, the one making the world warmer. Listen, how did you feel about your speech? Oh, I thought it was unique, just like everyone's family is unique and everyone's choices are unique. Catch a bubble. It is important to be kind, even when someone thinks differently than you do. Telling the girls that they've been told diabolical lies on their special day is not kind, friend. Staying in your lane means minding your own beeswax and focusing on what you're doing. Did someone need help kicking? Okay, so Harrison needs to worry about Harrison. Leave Isabel alone. How would you feel if someone always decided what you should do? Okay, well, it's important that the girls decide for themselves, just like you want to decide for yourself, because everyone's the boss of their own body, even the girls. Wow, that was a super inside thought. Let's hold that in our brain forever and ever. Got it, got it? Oh, I'm glad you're not afraid of being disliked. Today was a party to celebrate your friends and their accomplishments, but let's leave Taylor out of it. Let's leave all the girls out of it.
Again, I'm sorry. That was that was painful. It really was. I made a comment like somebody I follow on Twitter was like, "Look, I just want to chuck myself out the window or something like that," and just by watching this, and I was like, "Look, if it, I said telling an adult your significant other or an adult to catch a bubble, I think that's a divorceable offense. I'm pretty sure. Like this catch, I had to look it up because I had never heard this. I was like, catch a bubble. Like I had an idea of what she meant because she was like, catch a bubble. And then she like blew her cheeks out, right? And I was like, what? And apparently this is actually a thing. Like you can go online and look, and there are resources to to tell you, to instruct you on how to utilize this phrase to catch a bubble. And the idea behind it is that like a little kid will blow out their cheeks or something, and then that forces them to be unable to speak. But basically, it's just it's like a polite way of saying shut up. That's really all it is. It's it's like saying bless your heart, and you're like, see, I don't use inappropriate language. Right. What you're doing is you're just masking it. And then the other one, like honestly, if I'm ever talking to any adult and they tell me macaroni cheese, everybody freeze, I'm tuning out right there. I'm not even going to listen. Whatever you have to say cannot possibly be important after that. That's just how I'm going to treat it. Like that's the way it is. And like I just saw this Every time I was like, "Oh my god, this is terrible." Like, one of the comments that I said, it was like, "These are the people that say this, that use these that say, like, to catch a bubble and think that it's okay to tell children that, and God forbid, even adults. These are the same people that will use this kind of language, talk in this manner to children, but they're also the same people that will turn around and be like, "You know what? Your child, you need to respect their gender because they know what's up. They understand their gender." Like, "Oh, really? Children understand their gender. We need to use all their pronouns, possibly give them puberty blockers, but we also need to tell them, uh-uh, catch a bubble." Really? That's my son is 5, and in 5 years, I have n I don't think I've ever talked to him like that, and I don't think his mommy has either. Like, not even when he was smaller. Like, now we're having, you know, the conversations are becoming more adult. They're not adult-like yet. He is still 5, right? But we talk to him like he's a person, and we don't like, we adjust the conversation a wee bit, right? Like, I don't use profanity. You know, I kind of describe things, but I don't alter my voice. I don't get and let me say this. Let me show you who this person is in terms of there's an image. Let me pull this image up real quick because I want to point out something very quickly so that people don't get the wrong idea on my criticism of Miss Fodor. Okay. I don't want it to be misunderstood as just a outright attack. I'm just being mean, spirited, blah, 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 all those things. Okay. So here is her TikTok. It's just a screenshot of it, right? And she has 1.3 million followers. So fine. I'm happy, like, if you found some sort of niche that gets you a lot of followers and people are listening to listening or watching your content, no shade in that respect, okay? I'm okay with that. I'm not jealous, okay? Maybe, I mean, I guess maybe if I said to catch a bubble and some other silly little things, maybe I would have 1,000,000 followers too. But I'm not gonna do that because I think that's infantilizing our society. And I'm sure that she's probably exaggerating some. I can imagine that this is probably an exaggeration of how she might be in a classroom with children. But still, I think it's ridiculous. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we as a society would find this interesting content for adults. I mean, think about some of the things that we talk about. We talk about inflation, we talk about war, people dying, people going hungry, families struggling. There are all these topics, these very, very adult topics. And in my opinion, like, there is a time and a place for humor and, mockery and ridicule. And then there's just this where it seems like that's how you view the world around you. You view those who disagree with you as a bunch of little children that you need to talk down to. And so that is what I'm kind of criticizing. Okay, not necessarily that she got to be more popular. Like, go get your followers, build your brand, do your thing. That's fine. But as a critic, well, I'm going to be a critic. That's how it works. And so for me, I just look at this and I'm like, this is just wild that we would, what I do, I did that podcast a while back where I was referencing um, a paper that was written by Isaac Asimov. And he was talking about, people could be intellectual if they would just read more and put more effort into reading and learning. And then we get this, we get catch a bubble, right? Like, that's the extent of taking us further, taking humanity to the next step to catch a bubble, you know, and talk about how a sticker's not going to hurt you to tell you about methane gas. So, so anyway, so there's that. I just wanted to lay that out. So And let's be clear. I read in this article, I just showed it. I didn't show it to you, but I read it to you. This is what she said to grown adults. She said, if you find yourself talking over or speaking for BIPOC individuals, or God forbid, correcting them, just take a beat, and instead we can put our listening ears on. So in some sense, this isn't even just a brand that she's using. Like, she actually talks to people like this. Like, she said, I would never tell my wife, put your listening ears on. I'm 46 years old. That's not how I talk to other adults. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm trying to tell you something, right? Like, that's how I would talk to somebody. I don't say, put your listening ears on. Now, I will say this. I did say that when I was in my 20s. I got into it with a manager when I was working, and I felt like she wasn't listening to me and hadn't listened prior. And I said, what did I say? I said, you need to open your ears and listen. And she did not respond. She did not respond kindly to that, and for good reason, because that's very condescending to talk to an adult like that. And so, if I were to ever be brought on to some, some podcast or some show where there's hundreds of thousands of people that are listening in, you can be rest assured that I'm not going to tell you to put your listening ears on, or to catch a bubble, or macaroni cheese, everybody freeze. Okay. We're not saying that. Now, what does that have to do with how can I tie that in to a personal story? Well, here's what I put out on my Facebook page. Now, my Facebook page is semi-private, but I'm going to read you what I put out, and then I'm going to read you some of the responses that came back to me. So here's what I said. And what I said had nothing to do with this particular video. I just wanted to lead in with this video, talk a little bit about how we're infantilizing people. And then now I'm going to tell you a different story. And then I'm going to tie them both together. So here's the story. I'm becoming increasingly convinced the proper way for a little boy to toughen up is roughhousing. Told my wife if I get a concussion, I impose few limits: groin, throwing hard toys, no rough play with mommy. I impose few limits. Well, I'm sorry. I get. Let me back up. Told my wife if I get a concussion from repeated head punches, that it's necessary. That it's a necessary cost. He has boxing gloves, but still packs a punch. It's not that I didn't believe it's. It's not that I didn't believe it so much as I haven't experienced it personally. First kid and all. So it's hard to necessarily connect theory with what it means in practice. While obviously my rough is kind of held back, a stray hand, head, knee, or foot happens. My son and I were play fighting, and he took a knuckle to his tooth. He started to cry, and I looked and said, no blood, you're fine, and proceeded to keep play fighting. And he immediately jumped back into play fighting and forgot that he was about to start crying. I think this is the first time that I've seen such a quick turnaround back to playing. And don't get me wrong, I don't think he needs to be too tough, but enough to manage the world he experiences as appropriate for his age. I think we're on a good path. Plus, it's fun. So that's what I put out on Facebook. And basically, that is the story that happened. I was roughhousing. And here's how it kind of started. I've been noticing that my son is a bit, I like to say, he's a bit delicate, right? And he's a gentle soul until he gets really angry. And then he's, well, anyway, then he's the hardcore 5-year-old. But at any rate, he's a very gentle kid, and he's 5. So right now, any injury that happens is probably the worst thing that's happened to him in his whole life. Like, literally, like, not a joke. Like, if he scrapes his knee really hard, that's going to be the worst injury that he's ever faced in his whole life. Okay. But what I'm trying to do is get him to a place where he can get a little hurt. If he's in the, I don't, not intentionally, but, if he happens to get hurt, and he can get up, dust himself off, and keep going, because I want him to be resilient. So maybe that's the word we're looking for. We want him to be resilient. He doesn't necessarily need to be tough. Okay. But that's not so bad either. But I want to make him resilient so that when he faces adversity, he can he can grab it by the horns and do what he needs to do. If that means playing and he falls down and he gets a small scrape and it's not a big deal, then he can just kind of get up, kind of dust the dirt off his knee and then keep playing with his friends so that he can enjoy playing. And this is how I grew up. I even remember when I was probably about 15 or 16, I was playing tackle football in the field with some guys, and there were dudes that would just play rough, like really rough. Like that was their opportunity to be aggressive. And I remember one guy, he came and he tackled me. And it wasn't really a tackle, it was more like he clotheslined me and then slammed me down in the ground, and then my elbow jammed up into my rib. It took my breath away. My ribs hurting. I can't breathe. I'm all like, and he's like, "Come on, man, come on, just keep playing. You'll be fine. You'll be fine." And and I was like, okay, I had to catch my breath, but I did. I caught my breath, and then I kept playing, right? And this is what I want. And when it came time for teasing, when I was younger, when I was in junior high and kids were making fun of me, I didn't have that resiliency, not for teasing, and I had to develop it. And then once I developed it, I was like, okay, whatever, you can say whatever you want, make fun of me for being short. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard it all before, whatever, right? Well, today, now I do a podcast. I sometimes, I'm online. People say mean things to me, and I laugh. I'm like, "Eh, whatever. Like it doesn't bother me. And sometimes I get into an argument with people. And in the moment, I'll be a little bit angry, maybe because, passions and, whatnot. But I don't get worked up because I'm resilient. And that's not to say that I don't have my own triggers, and that's not to say that I don't have my own weaknesses. We all do. But I have, over a lifetime, built a certain resilience, and I can handle the world around me. And the world around me at 46 is much different than it is my son at 5. Now, I want to read to you some of the responses that people said to me because I thought some of the responses were pretty interesting. One friend said, "It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Boys need, all caps, roughhousing for confidence, learning, limits, to expel energy, and so much more critical skills later in life." Totally agree. I just described later in life because I'm not roughhousing today. Like my buddies, when we get together, we don't go out in the yard and necessarily roughhouse. I mean, we could, I guess, and we don't really play like tackle football anymore, you know? We could, but we don't. But what we do is we discuss our opinions about things, and sometimes it gets a little heated. And sometimes maybe I go to work and the boss says something that I don't like, or I get in trouble because, maybe I wasn't doing so well on a particular project, or I made a foolish mistake and I had to have my ass chewed. Or sometimes maybe, I'm getting in trouble with the wife for something, right? And what I'm describing is that there's conflict all around. It doesn't go away. And so we need to build our resilience so that we can handle it accordingly. Now, that doesn't mean that I need to foist the kind of resilience that I need as a 46-year-old upon my 5-year-old. That only means that I need to lead him down the path. Let's see here. Where's another one? I like this comment. It's a little bit longer, but it said, "I didn't read anything that I disagree with. As a child care professional, that is how I would have handled the rough playing situation. Children follow our leads. If we are calm and unworried, then they will be too. Teaching children not to overreact is a great skill to foster. Also, studies show that children who rough play with their parents are able to correctly judge the difference in playing and using force. It teaches them boundaries and healthy respect for conflict. It teaches them to be more gentle with others because they learn what their body can do. Empathetic parents create empathetic children. Your son is a good boy. Keep it up." I mean, I agree. Most not because you just gave me a bunch of compliments, but I agree. Like the way we treat children is the way they develop. And with my son, what I did is I said, okay, we're getting to the age where we need to learn to dust ourselves off. And I intentionally said, I think I told my wife, I said, I think he needs some roughhousing, which was kind of weird out of nowhere. Right. And this was before all of this, before I saw the video, before I made this comment, obviously, because I only made the comment after we started roughhousing. And so we started play fighting. And I gave him, and he put in his little boxing gloves on and he came at me. And I don't really have a lot of rules. I don't, I don't box him in, you know, not intended. And so I just let him swing wildly, jump all over me, do whatever. And then I wrestle with him, of course, since he's 5 and I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit bigger. Okay. I'm small, but I'm still tremendously bigger than him. And so I definitely take it easy on him, but not too easy, right? Like I'll get, while we're play fighting, like he's punching me in the head and I might give him a slight slap on the cheek. And I do this on purpose. One, we're roughhousing. And so it's, we're just playing and having fun. But the other thing is I'm slowly teaching him to take a small smack to the cheek and not be worried about it. Take a smack on his leg, you know. Now I didn't intentionally throw my knuckle into his face and into his tooth. That was not intentional. That was actually just a stray knuckle. He caught it. And, I'm not trying to hurt him. I'm only trying to build him up in the way that I'm approaching him. And when he took that stray and then we just said, all right, let's just keep going. He did. And it was great. And I was like, wow. And this is only the second time that we have intentionally been roughhousing for like 20, 30 minutes. Like literally just rolling around on the floor like two little kids. Okay, just roughhousing. And I was like, wow, that kind of solidified in my mind. I was like, yes, this is what I should be doing. I should be roughhousing with him, like for multiple reasons, not just because it's fun and we're boys and we like to get aggressive, not just because he's got a lot of energy and he does need to get it out, which is something I believe. I believe that little boys, the biggest struggle that they have in school is that they have way more energy than is being let out. Not for just those reasons, not just because, hey, he wants to wrestle and play with daddy, although that's a pretty important reason, but also because what is going to lead him to be in the future. And in the future, he's going to be more resilient because of it. He's going to, when he's outside playing with his friends, like I was one day, and he gets injured and it's not a serious injury, he's going to be able to get up, take a breath, collect himself, and then keep going at the same level that he had been. And then when he gets older and kids maybe make fun of him or they peer pressure him or whatever it is that they're doing, he will hopefully have developed resiliency to withstand some of that. Now, there will always be some growing pains. It's not like what I do today is going to make him, practically a man in a couple of weeks and he'll be ready to take on the world with no failures ever. He will still make mistakes and he will still have failures, and that's okay. And then one day he will be an adult. He will have some opinions. He will have conflict with somebody. He'll be in an argument. Maybe he'll be at the park and he'll foolishly interject himself into a conflict that's not his and almost get in a fight with another dad, like somebody did a couple of weeks ago. You can check my my older podcast for that story, right? But whatever the case is, this will lead to him being more confident and being more resilient in the world. So back to Ms. Frazzled, which is what she goes by on TikTok. What has this got to do with her? Well, I feel like we're infantilizing our adults. Now, we're already infantilizing our children, right? By these silly things. And look, I don't make too big of a deal if it's just something fun to kind of get their attention. If you say, hey, crisscross applesauce, crisscross applesauce, like I think it's corny. And if I were a school teacher, don't, I feel pretty confident that I wouldn't say that. I would just be like, hey, sit down with your legs crossed. And, and you could argue whether or not that would be the better approach or whatnot. But if it's just all in good fun because you still are working with children, then fine. But when we start doing this and we start teaching young kids silliness like catch a bubble, which is just a nice way to say shut up. Well, these kids aren't dumb. They know what's up. They know what you're saying. They know that you're telling them to shut up in just a polite way. And so what are we teaching? We're teaching them, hey, condescension is okay. And then it's even worse when we take it to adults. No adult should ever hear from another adult, put your listening ears on. That might work for a classroom full of children to kind of playfully get their attention and to use something on their level because kids, they respond to, to those kind of comments, right? So I get it. It's just not how I would do it, but I get it. They respond to those kind of things, but adults shouldn't. And so it makes me wonder if many of the teachers or some of the teachers are leading our children down a poor path so that they will not be resilient, that they think that condescension is okay to talk to people. And for me, I think the parallels here are when you're an adult, verbally, we're sometimes roughhousing. I don't roughhouse with my son all the time. Sometimes we sit down and we read a book. Sometimes we talk about our day. I say, "Hey, how are you doing? How was your day?" Like if he's been out with his mom all day long. Like, "How you doing?" "Hey, go check on your grandma. Go see if she's hungry. Go tell grandma it's time to eat dinner." Right? We have lots of conversations. We engage in ways that aren't roughhousing. We sit down and he shows me a drawing that he's made, right? But there's all this. So roughhousing is not the entirety of what we do, but it is a portion of what we do. Similarly, as an adult, when we're discussing, political and social and political topics, we might engage in some roughhousing. When my buddies are over, I had a couple buddies over actually Friday night. And that's when the whole Olympics brouhaha came out, right? And we got into debating this issue. And my two buddies were like, "Oh, I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's, I don't think they're making fun of the Last Supper." In my initial response was that they were, and so we were debating it, and we got a little loud with each other over this, right? That was our version of roughhousing, and we all took it in stride. We're all still friends, you know and then we've even had some later text message conversations after the fact, where I came back and I said, "All right, well, upon, further information, I've come to a different conclusion." Right. And so this is how we engage in the world through some roughhousing. And so I think this is very telling because again, it's not just a shtick that she's using to gain some social media presence, which I don't have a problem with. Everybody's got to do their own thing. That's cool, right? And I won't agree with everything, and I might be critical of it, but I'm not going to try to stop you per se. I just might say, "Yeah, that's dumb. You shouldn't do that," you know? And but again, I'm okay with it. Like it's cool. Everybody, we're all fighting, anybody that's trying to do social media videos and stuff like this, that's on TikTok and they're trying to build a following. Like we're all doing the same thing, and so it's competition, and that's cool, And you can make fun of me and say, "DL, you're just too boring. Why, you need to lighten up. You need to say catch a bubble more." And I'm going to tell you no, and I'm probably going to make fun of you if I even talk to you after that. So it's okay that we're trying to build a brand, but it's clearly went beyond brand with this person because she literally told hundreds of thousands of women to put their listening ears on. And at that point, they should have tuned her out. They should have said, "That's not how we talk to adults. That's not how we move humanity forward. It is not how we build children. It is not how we build adults because we're all still building each other." Okay. Just because you're an adult, like, I don't care. I'm 46. I am still learning about the world around me and I'm still improving myself. physically, mentally, my health, all that good stuff, right? I am still building up upon all of those things. Same way as a child is, they got a little bit more advantage, because I'm old now, right? Things are hurting that shouldn't be hurting, but whatever. Story for another day. But we're basically doing the same thing. And so I think that when this bleeds out into the real world, then it kind of is telling about how people think of other people. I- Whoever you are that's watching or listening, I think of you as an adult that can handle an adult conversation, that can handle me saying, look, you need to back up, quiet, or maybe even hey, shut up. I'm not done talking. Now, we shouldn't talk like that on a regular. I mean, that might just be when we're getting in the heated moment, right? And that's okay from time to time. And you, more importantly, as an adult, need to be able to occasionally handle it. Now, again, I'm not saying that we should run around telling everybody to shut up, and just use the most harsh language possible to say it. What I'm telling you is that we need to be prepared to handle it should it happen, and it occasionally will, and that's okay. We also should be working to improve our communication skills such that we hopefully need to use it less and less. And we demonstrate that by how we actually talk to people. And that's the criticism. When it goes beyond just a silly little brand to get yourself some followers, which is cool, no shade there. When it goes beyond that and you start actually speaking like that to people, we're infantilizing them, and we are ensuring that they're not ready, or that we're pushing them backwards so they won't be ready to handle tough conversations. Because you've all been in a debate with somebody else over a topic. And sometimes people get a bit passionate about topics. And we need to be able to handle that passion. More importantly, what happens when there's a power imbalance? How do you handle it there when you're passionate and you have a boss, or, somebody that you think or you feel has a little bit more power in the world than you? Well, I want my son to feel confident at all times, whether he's talking to a friend who's 100% his equal, or he's talking to the CEO of a company that he works for, right? I don't care who he's talking to or who he's engaging with. I want him to always be confident in whatever he's doing, whether he's playing soccer or talking about his day. I want him to be confident. And I feel like if we had more confident people in the world, a lot of the problems that we see, we wouldn't be having people break down because the wrong pronoun was used. They would be confident and say, look, I'm trans and you don't have to agree with it. And you could call me whatever, but I'm going to stand tall. Or I'm gay, I'll stand tall. Or I'm conservative and I'm surrounded by a bunch of progressive and liberal people, but I'm going to stand tall. Wherever you are, that's surrounding you, we should always be seeking to build a society where people are confident and will stand tall. That's what I'm doing with my son, and I will continue to do that as he gets older. And I will never say to catch a bubble, because that just sounds weird. I just can't I really can't get over that, folks. I'm sorry. I know that I'm going on and on and on about catch a bubble, and I can't help it. Because at first I just thought it was like some silly little phrase that, was that, one of those, like, one of those comments that gets a little bit of social media presence, and it kind of, that like, once you leave social media, it's not really a popular phrase. It doesn't really get used. And then I found out, like, no, it's actually a thing. It actually is a real thing. And I was scratching my head, and I was really like, wow, okay, I don't know. Anyway, I'll stop talking about that. I promise. That's the last time. Last time. No more. All right, so let's get to some comments here, because that's all that I had to say there. I just wanted to kind of give that. So let's take a look at some comments and see what we've got here. Let's see. We got Mike here. He says, I agree that roughhousing is good and necessary for children, especially boys. I totally agree. Now, if I had a girl, I would, I think, I don't know, because I don't have one. And, I think that would be, I know I would be welcoming to the idea of roughhousing. I think it would be a little bit different. If I had a girl, I don't think I would quite roughhouse the same as if I had, as if, as I do my son. Um, I'd probably be doing tea parties more. But yes, I agree. Roughhousing is important for many reasons. They need to get off that energy. I think that's the biggest problem that we run into in schools is that boys specifically have tons of energy and they need to run and just basically wear themselves out. And then they're going to be more likely to sit down and listen and do their schoolwork. Let's see what we got. Hey, this is an interesting one. Keith says rough housing works for puppies too. It does. I've had several dogs growing up and I used to roughhouse with them. One day we will get a puppy and I will teach my son to roughhouse with the puppy, and I will roughhouse right along with him. So I absolutely agree. I think that living creatures on this planet from time to time need to expel some of that energy in a physical way, whether it's roughhousing, going for a run, going cycling, lifting weights, go rock climbing, go mountain climbing, whatever, hiking. Like it doesn't matter whether you're a male or a female. There is, in my opinion, a need to get out some of this energy and to just physically move. And so, yes, puppies too. Let's see, what else do we got? Um, let's see here. Analytical mind says it's basically ideological subversion, but tired. So look, the teachers don't know they are ideologically subverting students, but they are. I, once upon a time, I actually was kind of more sympathetic. I'm like, oh, they're just, you know, they don't mean it, blah, blah. And so I kind of get torn between they don't know they're doing it and they're doing it on purpose. And I kind of go back and forth between that. But I do believe that, yes, there is some subverting going on. And I think we're not going to have this whole conversation now because it could be its own entire podcast. But I think that part of it is because a lot of teachers are now looking to wrap the classroom around them rather than adapt to the classroom, right? So they're adapting everybody else to them. And I think this is part of the reason we see some of those libs of TikTok videos with crazy teachers that are like, "Oh, my class today, they said my pronoun and they were having a conversation and one corrected the other because, I'm not a she, I'm a he, blah blah blah." And they get all excited and giddy about it. I think that is them adapting the classroom to them rather than adapting to the classroom, which is what I think you should be doing to some degree. Right now, there's certain areas where discipline and whatnot, they need to adapt to the rules and all that. But again, if I were a teacher, it's not my job to adapt students to my identity, my personality. It is my job to adapt to them in as much um, as needed for their development. And then my identity and my personality mostly get a back seat. And so but that, again, that's a conversation for another day. All right. I think that's all the comments for today. Folks, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern ish. We're still working on it for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com. You can also go to rumble.libertydad.com. Let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment while you're there. Remember, last but not least, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch it next time. That's tomorrow. But for now, I'm out.